Hello, I'm Dominic Walker, JMW's Inside Man, and I'm with Joanne Brine. Joanne is a partner in JMW's personal injury department and specialises in travel litigation. Hello, Joanne.
Hi, Dominic.
Joanne, I wanted to talk to you. I mean, really a very sad topic of if somebody is killed in a road traffic collision. Is it possible to bring a civil claim even if there's no criminal proceedings?
Absolutely. Quite commonly, we see that even after a fatal collision or a collision involving a very serious injury, there may not be a criminal conviction. That either may be because a criminal case wasn't brought against the defendant, or the case went to court and there was no conviction in the criminal courts. The main reason really is that the burden of proof is very different in the civil courts than it is in the criminal courts. In the criminal courts, the judge or the jury have to be satisfied beyond all reasonable doubt that a crime has been committed. Whereas for the cases that we pursue via the civil courts, the burden that we have to show is just on the balance of probabilities that that person's driving fell below that of a reasonably competent driver. So it's a very different test. We also see sometimes that criminal convictions don't succeed, or the criminal cases aren't pursued if the defendant, if the perpetrator is overseas, is not domiciled in England or Wales, or if the defendant was also killed or subsequently dies, then criminal charges won't be brought. I think whilst criminal cases don't penalise the defendant, I think it helps our families, that the victims that we act for, they feel a sense of justice if there's been a finding in their favour in the civil courts. But also, really importantly, if there's been a fatal accident, a civil claim can help them to financially rebuild their family's life. Or if there's been a serious injury, a civil claim can enable them to have access to additional rehabilitation to help them achieve the best possible outcome from those injuries.
And you mentioned about the criminal case, Joanne. It's obviously a heartbreaking time for families. Do they have to sit back and wait for the criminal proceedings, or can they start a civil claim sort of straight away?
No, absolutely not. They don't have to wait for the outcome of the criminal case, which can take many months or even years. It's quite normal for a civil case to run alongside those criminal proceedings. And I would say to people, it's actually important for them to instruct solicitors as soon as they feel able to do so, because we also want to start to gather evidence, and it's better to do that as soon as possible. For example, if we want to speak to witnesses, their recollection obviously fades over time. There's also a protocol period that we follow within personal injury cases, which takes some time to go through. And again, it's important that during civil proceedings, while criminal cases are ongoing, we can often access interim payments to help the families financially whilst they await the outcome of the final hearings.
And Joanne, earlier on you mentioned that sometimes these criminal proceedings don't go ahead. Is there anything a family can do to challenge that if that happens?
There is a right to review a decision by the CPS, and that the victims can ask the CPS to reconsider. It's difficult because the CPS have to balance whether there's a realistic prospect of a conviction and whether it's in the public interest. But we have seen cases where, when families have asked for a right to review, there has been a different outcome and there's been a decision to proceed, which has helped. And even if there is no new outcome and they uphold the original decision, there's often an explanation that's given to the family which may help them to understand.
Joanne, thank you very much for your insight. And something that sticks in my mind from what you said just earlier on is contact a solicitor and get some advice. If you'd like to speak to Joanne, you can email her insideman@jmw.co.uk or call 0161 82 81 999. I'm Dominic Walker, JMW's Inside Man.